Yo, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today we got another wild and crazy review of another 1970s erotic trash fantasy novel. This time we're delving into the Red Sonja universe. This is book number 1, The Ring of Ikribu, or Ikribu, or Ikribu. I don't know how you pronounce it. But it is book number 1, done by David C. Smith and Richard L. Tierney, collaboration. So let's go over the history of this book a little bit, starting with the cover. This cover is a Boris Vallejo masterpiece. You know, in the 1970s, they used to do these, what they were called the erotic trash fantasy novels. And I got into them. I started to get into them when I read Raven. The first Raven book. If you want to watch my review of this Raven book, just, you know, search for it. The Chainmail Bikini. That is the hallmark of the 70s trash fantasy novels, is the girls in the chainmail bikinis. The High Couch of Silistra by Janet E. Morris, another one where, you know, the chainmail is just pasties. I mean, they don't even wear a bikini in the High Couch in the Silistra series. They just, it's like they're at a strip club non-stop in these books. But that's why we love them. And the marketing was that back then in the 80s and 70s, the marketing was different. It was different, folks. If you lived back then, you could get away with majestic, glorious things like this and not be criticized. Now, every single one of the Red Sonja books has just another magnificent Boris Vallejo piece of artwork with the beautiful, beautiful just paintings, and that's probably my favorite. Anyway, you get the point. So, I've been collecting these things off eBay, and once you start collecting one series of 70s erotic trash fantasy novels, then eBay starts to recommend you everything that might be kind of like that. Which I have no problem with in this instance. I don't mind being recommended these things because I have been finding some glorious treasures on eBay, especially this Red Sonja series, which someone was selling. Because individually, these books in mint condition go for between $60 and $100 a piece. Well, I saw a dude selling all 6 of them as a set for $100 total. Of course, I clicked buy as quickly as I could. I mean, I couldn't push the button quick enough because I needed these absolute marvelous gems in my collection. I absolutely did. My God. Let's talk about the history of this book. Why are there Red Sonja books? Who is Red Sonja? Where does she come from? She comes from the Conan the Barbarian universe. She comes from Robert E. Howard. She was a minor character in a minor short story that Robert E. Howard wrote. It was called Red Sonja of Rigotine. It was, and the original short story, it was about a 16th century Russian-born, tall, red-haired lady who carried around a saber, a dagger, and 2 pistols. That was the short story. That's the only place Robert E. Howard ever mentioned her. Now, there was this dude who worked for Marvel Comics at the time that the Conan comic books were wildly popular. But he realized there's not that many female characters in the Conan universe. Or if they are, they're just damsels in distress for Conan to save, or women for him to sleep with. Some of the coolest ones got killed early off, or they wandered off into the desert. But there was just none, and so they were like, well, who can we want Conan to have a sidekick that's female. So they looked through the Robert E. Howard catalog of stuff. They saw this Red Sonja, who was from the, well, they just took her out of the 16th century place that Robert E. Howard had put her and dropped her into Conan's, Hyperion Age, and then she became a character of her own. She was so popular in the Conan comics that she started to get her own comics and books and movies. That's how this started. And where the world is better off for it, because now we've got Red Sonja of Hykania, who gets to travel around in the Conan universe in all these books, wearing nothing but what she's wearing. And I the opening scene, okay, so in the opening scene, it's a sorcerer, Asgoth, who seeks the Ring of Ikribu, and he keeps sending adventurers after adventurer off to find the ring for him, because it's a powerful ring. It's a magic ring. It's like the One Ring. Frodo, I think, carried it for a while. And then it ended up, Red Sonja ended up looking for it too. But anyway, Asgoth, he sends out these adventurers. They fail to find the ring, yada, yada, yada. And then enter Red Sonja. The first line of this book made me smile. And it is, if I could get to the right page, the first line of this book is, I'll find the right page, I swear to you I will. It is, outside the tavern, the wild night stormed. That's a beautiful sentence. Outside the tavern, the wild night stormed. It's a play on, it was a dark and stormy night. I absolutely dig that kind of thing. Now let's talk about Red Sonja herself, because she enters this tavern. And as she enters the tavern, she is described in majestic detail. I mean, we talk about chainmail bikinis. We're not far from the truth here. Let's describe how she looks as she enters this tavern. And it is written so well. I love the guys, these two dudes that collaborated on this book, Smith and Tierney. Good writers, good writers. Listen to this. Now the gray cloak came off in a bold arc, spraying water droplets, and beneath it was revealed a woman. She was tall and fair-skinned, with a head of long, tousled, flame-red hair, and she was armored. A long sword swung in a scabbard at her side, a knife at her hip. She wore a brief vest and skirt of silvery scaled mail that covered only her breasts and hung almost to her waist, but it left her belly, limbs, and midriff bare. Good armor, but too little of it for practicality. That's great. It was armor, but too little of it for practicality, and evidently worn less for protection than as a symbol of her untamed spirit. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I like that. I mean, they basically they spell it right out. Hey, we know we've got this lady in a fantasy setting wearing next to nothing except for armor that covers her privates and her boobies, and we realize that's ridiculous. We understand it's preposterous. We get that it's laughable. But we're going to put it in there anyway and say, hey, the reason she does this is because she's a badass bitch. She don't care about no armor. She don't give a fuck. She's a badass bitch. She'll take you on naked. Don't matter. She ain't worried that you're going to cut her up with her. Well, she has protected some parts. She's worried about some parts of herself. Let's be honest. She's worried that some parts might get cut. But the things that she don't care about, she doesn't cover. Like her vitals, face, her hamstrings. Anyway, okay, so this is a very old school Clash of the Titan-esque feel book, with the monsters coming out. I mean, I was really, as I was reading this, I was just picturing those old school Flash Gordon movie, the Flash, He'll save every one of us. Those type of, those type of movies, the action, the monsters, the creatures, it just kind of had those herky-jerky feel to the way that they were kind of moving through this landscape. I will say that Robert E. Howard writes with a certain flair for words. These guys try to mimic that, but not quite get it all the way. But thank God for their effort, because it makes for some great writing and some great scenes. I will just read the back of it now to give you the main plot, and then we'll end the review. She lived in a savage world in an uncivilized age, a world ruled by men and governed by the sword. They called her Red Sonja, for her flame-red hair, for the smoldering fire of her pride, which gave her sword arm a strength that few men could match and none had ever defeated. Thus, she doesn't need armor. In the very lands where Conan the Cimmerian wielded his powerful blade, this beautiful and deadly warrior maid traversed the Hyborian kingdoms with her sword for hire. Lured by the promise of riches and adventure, Red Sonja is drawn into a war between a city of doomed mortals and the awesome ambitions of a centuries-dead sorcerer on a quest for the primal, untamed power forged into a ring of the gods, the Ring of Ikribu. This is a great book. All of these 70s erotic trash novels are turning out to just be absolutely spectacular fun reads. And I give Red Sonja a solid 9 out of 10. Book 1, The Ring of Ikribu.